Christopher. Oh, Jason, I'm sorry, Jason Lemieux.
Members of the Progressive Caucus, thank you for coming to hear our testimony today. I also want to extend a thanks to Kelly Doherty for introducing us. It is an honor for me to be part of an organization with selfless leaders like Kelly Doherty. My name is Jason Lemieux. I served 4 years and 10 months in the United States Marine Corps Infantry with Weapons Platoon, Lima Company, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines. During that time, in absence of a congressional declaration of war, I served 3 deployments to Iraq, including the initial invasion. On July 9, 2006, I was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps with the rank of Sergeant. I've been a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War since August 2006, and I currently serve as the Secretary of IVAW's National Board of Directors. The written testimony I submitted today illuminates how unit loyalty and camaraderie, psychological trauma, lack of strategic guidance, command complicity, and our national insistence on minimizing short-term casualty rates all lead to widespread destruction of civilian life and property in Iraq and make rules of engagement, for all practical purposes, unenforceable, all of which I'll note has historical precedent and could have been anticipated before the invasion began. It's very painful for me to slash so much of my written testimony down into 9 minutes here for this, but please understand that what you hear from me is the tip of the iceberg, both of my written testimony and of my experiences in Iraq. Throughout my 3 tours, I was present on numerous occasions when Lima Company and the platoons therein were ordered by commissioned officers to shoot any Iraqi who seemed suspicious or made us feel uncomfortable, with the assurance that the chain of command would quote-unquote take care of us. Taking care of us meant that the chain of command was loyal to their Marines before the rules of engagement or the laws of war, and would protect Marines from legal prosecution, even if it meant providing false information to investigators. In the summer of 2005, I was preparing to finish my 4-year contract just as 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines was gearing up for a 3rd deployment to Iraq, this time to Ramadi. I voluntarily extended my enlistment contract by 10 months to redeploy with 3-7 for a 3rd tour. I was solidly against the occupation of Iraq, believing it unwinnable, illegal, and immoral. However, I extended my contract to help bring home all of the junior Marines who had never served in combat. Part of the agreement I made with my commanding officer for extending my contract was that I would lead an experimental intelligence section for Lima Company instead of serving in an infantry platoon as I had done on the previous deployments. Many of the Marines serving on their 2nd or 3rd tours showed signs of psychological trauma, and as deployments dragged on and friendly casualties mounted, morale plummeted and excessive force became routine. As the intelligence section leader on the 3rd tour, I was responsible for sending our battalion intelligence reports that often detailed the excessive force I mentioned earlier. One of these reports involved an attack on Entry Control Point 2, or ECP2 as it was known to us in Ramadi. ECP2 is located on a bridge over the Habaniya Canal, and it's the only route into Ramadi from the northwest. West of ECP2 is the city of Tamim, which is really an extension of Ramadi, although not part of the city proper. During my deployment, ECP2 was manned by Lima Company Marines 24 hours a day. It was occasionally attacked by snipers firing from Tamim, but these attacks were usually ineffective. I submitted an incident report for one such attack in January or February of 2006. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact date. But in any event, I interviewed the squad leaders. I interviewed multiple squad leaders from 2 different platoons separately and cross-checked their information to collect the information that I would use to submit my report. I was also required to send account of all ammunition expended with my report. So after conducting my interview and cross-checking their information, I determined that ECP2 had received 4 rounds of poorly aimed enemy fire and returned fire with thousands of rounds of M16 ammunition, thousands of rounds of M240 Golf medium machine gun ammunition, hundreds of rounds of .50 caliber heavy machine gun ammunition, hundreds of rounds of Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher ammunition, several M203 rifle grenades, a novel explosive rocket, which has a thermobaric warhead quietly developed by the Marine Corps in the run-up to the initial invasion that is designed to kill or neutralize all personnel inside of a 2-story building and has been known to level entire 2-story buildings down to the foundation, and a 120mm main gun round from an Abrams tank, all of which were fired into an area of Tamim known to be owned and occupied by local civilians. One Humvee platoon squad leader even admitted to me that his platoon couldn't even detect any enemy fire, and they were just shooting because ECP2 was shooting. When I was discussing the incident with the lieutenant who commanded the platoon at ECP2, he proudly encouraged me to check out the house that he'd called in the tank round in on the next time that I was passing by. So as I wrote my report, the Lima Company executive officer came in and asked me to see the report, and of course I obeyed this order. And when he was finished reading, he looked up and said to me, "Lemieux, I think your views on this war are affecting your reports." I was taken aback by this claim, so I asked what he meant, and he said, "You said here that the platoon only took 4 rounds of enemy fire. There's no way they expended all that ammo, and they only took 4 rounds." Now I was shocked that the executive officer would accuse me of lying, and furthermore that he did not understand Marines routinely use such excessive force in Iraq, especially the platoon in question. So I informed him that such behavior was in fact routine, and I had interviewed multiple squad leaders separately and cross-checked their information to confirm the numbers in my report. So after I finished explaining all of this to him, he stared at the report for a moment before saying, "We can't send this report to battalion saying they expended all that ammo for only 4 rounds. He then proceeded to sit down at my intelligence computer and falsify the very same report that he had just accused me of falsifying, to change the number of enemy rounds that the infantry platoon had reported receiving." I don't remember the exact number that he changed it to, but it was in the double digits, if not higher. And it's worth noting that the only reason the executive officer or myself was even aware of this particular use of excessive force is because ECP-2 is so close to our base that we could hear them shooting and there was no sense in them lying about it. However, if they'd been on patrol a few kilometers away, we would know nothing of their activities except whatever they felt like reporting. So to summarize my written testimony, I was involved in firefights during which the rules of engagement were lifted by the chain of command or were simply ignored, resulting in needless and strategically counterproductive civilian deaths. I was ordered multiple times by commissioned officers and non-commissioned officers to shoot unarmed civilians if their presence made me feel uncomfortable. These orders were given with the understanding that my immediate chain of command would protect their subordinates from legal repercussions. In my unit, which I believe is representative of most serving in Iraq, the primary loyalty is not to democracy or to the flag or to America or to the Iraqi people or to the rule of law. It is to each other's safety at the expense of everything else. There were 2 separate instances in which commissioned officers ordered me to falsify reports of incidents involving civilian casualties. Cover-ups of excessive force were routine and effective, usually reaching no higher than the platoon level throughout my 3 tours. Contrary to what some military commanders have reported, Anbar civilians assumed responsibility for their local security in the quote-unquote awakening because of what Al-Qaeda in Iraq had done wrong and what we had failed to do right, not what we're doing right now. And finally, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines' focus on counterinsurgency operations caused its readiness to perform conventional military operations to severely decline throughout my service. This decline must be attributed not only to the physical, but also to the inevitable mental and moral factors of service in the Iraq occupation. Thank you for your time.